So I might be coming out with an unpopular opinion, but in these economic times that we're experiencing, I almost feel that it's more advantageous to rent than to own a home these days. And hear me out. I feel that just the cost of housing, just to own a house, is unattainable. You know, you have these high interest rates, first off, okay? The price of homes is astronomical. And if you're in Florida, particularly, another downside is paying these exorbitant insurance rates. You know, every time when, a major hurricane hits or, any sort of tropical system can cause major wind damage, flooding, that has made the goal of home ownership unattainable to many in Florida. But, that's just one isolated, region in America. And honestly, though, despite the issues with hurricane and insurance issues here, it's still more advantageous to rent than to own a house. Just because the prices of homes are so inflated, it seems unattainable in this present moment. At least for my age group. If you're in your 20s and you're in your 30s, it's insanely difficult to purchase a house. Especially with how high prices are, you have to come up with a sizable down payment, to have a chance of having, a reasonable monthly payment for your mortgage. But how many people in your age group can come up with a 20% down payment on a house? Not many. It seems that the people that are able to buy homes in America these days are people in older generations. People that are in their 50s, 60s, 70s that are happily retired. They got great pensions, cashing out their IRAs, 401ks. It just seems that that's the only age group that can afford homes these days. At least that's what I observe here in Southwest Florida. But I suspect that could be a phenomenon throughout the entire country. It just seems that, home ownership is increasingly becoming out of reach for young people like myself. It's unfortunate. But, I'm trying to make the best of, the situation that I am in. There are perks to renting. One is the flexibility, where if you know that you feel that you need to get up and go, move to a different part of the country, you can do so as a renter. If you own a house, it's not so easy to move around. You have to prepare so many things, to get up and go. You have to get your house sold. You have to worry if you can actually sell a house at the desired price that you're looking for. And that's the challenge of owning a house these days, is that because prices are so inflated in homes, if there is a major crash, which is not announced, but it definitely feels that way, if you're, if you have some degree of wit and social awareness, that there is major economic struggle going on in this country. So imagine buying a house at such an exorbitant price at such a high level, and then a recession or a depression hits, then you're stuck in that house. You're stuck with that large payment. And you better hope that, interest rates would drop so you can refinance and have a better monthly payment. But regardless, you will lose equity in your house. So that's a challenge. I don't know. I just feel that it's more advantageous to rent, at least in 2025, just because interest rates are so high. The cost of living is through the roof. I feel that, honestly, I get the argument that when you rent, you're throwing your money away. You're not building equity on any property that you reside in a rental, because, you're just giving it to the landlord. But I don't know. I kind of like the flexibility of renting. Of course, I would like to own a home, but not in this time period that we're in. It's weird. The housing market is very, very weird in this country. I feel that something has to give economically. Yeah, the fact that, prices in houses are so high, it really doesn't make sense. Something deep down is telling me that it's ideal to wait and sit this out. Yeah, if you're in the market for buying a house right now, really try to assess, if this is the right time to buy. To me, I feel that there is definitely room for a correction. Just because how high interest rates are, how high prices are, how shaky this economy is right now. You see a lot of people just struggling day in and day out, barely making ends meet. Credit card debt in this country is, at an all-time high. There's a lot of hurt going on economically in this country. And I don't know, I'm just speaking to the younger generation out there. I'm in my 30s, so hey, still kind of young, but not kind of young. But I just feel that it's more advantageous to rent right now, and just sit this out and seeing where, this economy is going to go in the U.S. It's like a very strange time that we're in. Yeah. I don't know. Just got me thinking, because there's so many, friends and family that are, pushing me to buy a house, but something tells me deep down it is not the right time to buy. Yeah, especially if you have to come up with, such a high down payment. You have to worry about insurance, which is just astronomical in Florida. I don't know how people do it, honestly. People that are owning homes. And, me working in the financial industry, I see the struggles that people are facing day in and day out in their finances. I can't tell you the stories of how many people come in and they tell me that they are trying desperately to sell their house and they can't because they cannot find a buyer. And rightfully so. Why would you get into a house where you have to pay crazy amounts of interest, or pay such a high price for a home that may not retain that value in the foreseeable future, just because prices are so high? Doesn't make sense. It doesn't. So, yeah, that's my thoughts. I think it's definitely more advantageous to rent, at least in the year 2025 in the US. No matter where you're at, I get, you build value in home ownership, I get it. But the way interest rates are, doesn't make sense. Anyways, if you like this video, give a like and subscribe. I'm trying to put out more content at least twice a week. So yeah, if you like my thoughts, give me a thumbs up and a like. Subscribe. Until next time.